Other high five. Yeah. Good job. Hello and welcome to the frosty Adelaide Hills today. We're going to be working back on Smokey, getting it ready. We were going to be going to High Tech in a week's time, but that's been shit canned due to COVID. So there may be a practice day coming up on that date instead, which should be really good. I was a bit disappointed with my driving and setup choices at the last round. I really didn't get much chasing done, and I paid the price for that because all of my chases were a bit shithouse. So what we're going to do instead is focus on setting the car up and making it so that I can drive it a lot more comfortably and I don't have to think so much about the car. I can just focus on getting on door. So a couple of sway bar choices, a couple of other things that we want to work on so I'm more comfortable. So let's get into it. First thing that we're going to do is take a look at the front sway bar. Biggest problem that we've got, if you look up here, that sway bar link, she's not connected at all. And there's also no actual ball joint in there to connect it to, because that's still on the strut up there. So you can probably see what's happened. That strut is designed to be like that. The problem is, if you get a whole bunch of angle on it, when you've, say, got a lock kit, that doesn't want to stay in there and it doesn't have enough rotation and it pops it out. So pretty much all of the last couple of events that I've done, I've had no front sway bar, which isn't the way that I like cars to be. I know some people love getting rid of the front sway bar. It's not really my jam. I have driven with them before. And when I look at photos of the car, I do notice that the front actually seems to be sort of tipping across too far. So I'm going to do something about that. I've got to figure out, I've got a couple of sway bars pulled off random cars, random E46s and stuff like that. Might see if we can make the links work. What we can do is these SLR arms actually have these points down here that you connect a E36 style or E30 style sway bar link to. So I'm going to see if I can conjure something up there, make it work, because I want this sway bar to work, but it's not really doing a whole lot at the moment. So let's go down to the bench and see what we can do about that. So I've gone and got myself an E36 non-M front sway bar from another car that I had. Apparently these fit a bit better. The length from here to where the sway bar mounts to the chassis is apparently the correct length, or at least a lot closer. Because if you look up here, this bar is actually supposed to connect to the back of the strut, so it's too long when you go to connect it to the arm here. So let's chuck this bar on, figure out if it fits up any better. Right. Okay. That wasn't the best thing that's ever happened. Let's send this design to SpaceX. First spanner in space. So I got the E36 bar in. It still doesn't line up with the mount on the lower control arm in a straight fashion, but Dad reckons he can make it work. It's also a bit thicker bar, and it doesn't have as much leverage coming from here rather than the other side of the lower control arm. So he reckons he can make that work. He's prepping the lathe at the moment, doing some measuring. I'm going to get stuck into a couple of other things so I don't get in his way. So I came out in the shed the other night to do a bit of a bolt check. Turns out there was a puddle of water underneath the car. The water pump had basically started leaking. Not super surprising, since that's the original water pump from that engine when it was built from Holden. So got a new water pump now from Repco. Gonna chuck that on. Just another reason to do your bolt checks, because if I spotted this a day or two before the event, it would have been disaster. Big stretch, mate. Well, Dad's all finished on the lathe now, and she's looking pretty good. So we've got the rod end at the top, got another one at the bottom down here. You'll probably notice that it's actually offset, the rod end, rather than being in between these two tabs. That's because if we put this rod end over in the middle here, it was going to have too much angle and it was going to bind up trying to get up here. So what we ended up doing was offsetting it to the side, and then we put a spacer in here with a bolt, so it still pulls and uses the strength of both tabs. Machined down the end of this bolt a bit, because this tie rod here is getting pretty damn close. So made sure there's a bit of clearance there. Dad spent a bit of time machining up all these parts here to go against the rod ends to make sure that we still get the maximum amount of angle we can out of these rod ends so they don't bind. So there's one here, here, and then another two up the top. Otherwise though, quite happy with how they turned out. Should be plenty strong. I can't see these binding or breaking, and it's going to be bloody nice to have a sway bar again. Well, that's the front bar sorted. I thought I might take a second and just explain what I'm hoping to achieve by doing these sway bar changes. Basically, at the front of the car at the moment, it feels very heavy, it's slow to transfer its weight, and it doesn't feel very agile. What I'm hoping to do by putting that sway bar and connecting it all up is fix some of those issues, stiffen it up, and just make it a bit more agile and a bit quicker to transfer its weight. So that's the idea behind the front end. On the rear end side of things, what I'm wanting to do is increase my forward bite without adding extra side bite. The problem I've got at the moment is if I just lowered tyre pressures or if I backed off the clickers on the rear end, I would increase both of those things, but I'm already having enough sort of problems with the side bite on the car. If I don't transition snappy enough, it tries to straighten. So I don't want to make that worse. My theory is I'm going to add this white line sway bar here. Should be a pretty thick sway bar, so that's hopefully going to stiffen up the rear end of the car. And when I'm off power, that should make it a bit more skatey. And then I'm going to lower the clickers and make the rear end a bit softer, hopefully quite a bit softer. And when I get on power, the rear end of the car should dive a bit more, and I should hopefully get my increased forward bite that way. So that's the theory. I haven't really had to increase grip in too many cars before. The 180 pretty much never needed more grip, it always needed less. So I'm kind of just making this shit up as I go, but I've got the bar here. Gonna chuck it on the car, and I guess down the track we'll figure out if my theory worked. Well, that's the old bar out. Time to grab the new one, put the links in first, and then put the bar up into it, and hopefully it's not too much of a fight to get it past the exhaust here. Well, that's the sway bars all mounted up, so gonna have to wait for the next track day to figure out if my theory on that side of things actually works out. But in the meantime, I've got the next thing that I need to do to the car. It's one that's been a long time coming, and it makes drifting out there just that little bit more entertaining, and that is having a passenger seat. So I got this from Autosport. It's one of the cheaper OMP seats. It's a little on the larger side, which is probably for the best. And now what I need to do is mount that in the car, and then I can take out passengers with me. Well, we're off and racing already. I've had to extend this slot here to make it a bit longer so that this side mount will fit onto the seat. I don't know what's too short, but either way, that's not working. Next thing is I've had to get the tap set out to clean these threads for the seat because they're that gummed up that you were afraid of snapping the bolt inside the thread without it even going tight. So we're off to a good start considering these are both new items, but I guess that's what happens when you start modifying cars. Well, it took long enough, but the side mounts are on the seat now. Probably need to grab some different hardware and some washers to go with that for when I put it in properly. But for the minute, it'll do for a test fit. The car actually came with these rails, so hopefully I can use them and just bolt one to the other. We'll see if it's that simple, but a man can dream. We'll figure out if that's actually the case in a second. So that one is on top of that there. How are we on this side? Oh! We might have hit the jackpot. I reckon that we can bolt that there, and then that one there. Yeah, I think that'll work. Who knew? Something was actually easier than it was supposed to be. I'm pretty happy with that. Looks like I'm taking passengers this weekend. Well, surprisingly, this seat rail's actually going pretty good at the moment. The seat's all in there. I'm pretty happy with the position of it. Doesn't get the passenger too close to all the controls. There's enough room on this side of things. I can still put my finger in between the roll cage and the seat there. It is very lightly touching it, but it's not like it's hard up against it, so I'm pretty happy with that. With the mounting, this bolt at the back there goes through the seat rails, the side mounts, and goes straight into the car with the factory mounting position, so that should be all okay. I think up the front I'm going to drill a hole in the seat rail and then poke a bolt through and weld that as a stud, and then that should pop up between one of those holes there. So that's actually working out pretty good. It's the perfect width. Well, now I'm going to have a seat in the car. I figure I may give a couple of you out there a chance to come in the car with me as passenger. So if you do want to come in Smokey with me at the next round of the State Series, round 4 at Malwa, you can look up the dates, I think it's sometime during September. Then go to my One Arm Bandit Facebook or Instagram, chuck me a message on there. First 2 people that chuck me a message can come out in the car. It's not necessarily going to be free because you still have to pay entry and for a passenger pass, which I think is about $50 for the passenger pass. But it's going to be a lot more laps than pro rides and probably a whole bunch cheaper. So figure I might give a couple of people that want to have a crack and watch the videos a chance to come out in the car with me, get to meet you guys. Should be good. So head to Facebook or Instagram, One Arm Bandit, and chuck me a message. Take a look at this thing. Back at my place now, and I'm pretty stoked with this banner that I got made up. I actually ordered this when I'd had a couple to drink during lockdown over eBay, and surprisingly the measurements turned out pretty good. I did forget about the PowerPoint there, but nothing a Stanley knife couldn't fix. And I've got something to do my talking videos in front of now, so pretty happy with that. On this side of things with the seat rail, I've marked out my hole. Just need to drill that out, then I can put an 8mm bolt from the bottom up and weld the head on the far side so it becomes a stud. And that should be all pretty easy to do. Well, the seat's all bolted in, it's all fitting, which is quite nice, and pretty happy with it overall. I'll just jump in the seat here. Oh, this seat's probably a little bit big for me, but I reckon it'll be perfect for passengers because you get some variability in the size of people that jump in the car. So got to chuck the harnesses on a little later on and also do something about this fire extinguisher because the mount no longer exists. The seat's sort of taken over the spot that was mounted. So overall, quite happy with it. Be good to have passengers in the car. Always adds an extra element of fun to drifting. Next up is going to be mini mats for me, which I reckon this video is probably going to come out the week after. And then round 4, like I said, jump on Facebook, Instagram, One Arm Bandit, chuck me a message, and first 2 people I'll take out in the car. So you could be sitting in this seat pretty soon if you wanted. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, all that normal bullshit, and see you on the next episode.